Do you believe you have a soul? And if you believe you have a soul, do you believe there's a creator to that soul? Whatever path that takes you down, but it's a good question to answer. And if you do, and there's some that won't, and that's okay. At least they've answered the question. The tragedy is never answering that question until you have to. But if you do, then the next questions become, if you have a soul and there's a creator, do you believe that creator of your soul has any behavioral expectation or relational expectation of the soul?
Let's impact some men today. I think we're going to do a great job. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Modern Man Podcast, where we are here to connect men in pursuit of their potential. I encourage you to join us as we embrace discomfort, cultivate community, and put wind in each other's sails. Now, before we jump into the episode, I encourage you to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button to get a new episode each and every single week, and share this with someone that you know can get value from this podcast as well. Also, to the men who are watching or listening, I encourage you to check out the Noble Knights Men's Group. It's a community of men where you will find the support, the accountability, and the mentorship you need to achieve your goals. Go ahead and find that group of like-minded individuals on a mission to improve themselves and elevate their capacity for life. And I'm excited because we're going to get some wind in our sails today from my guest, who is a seasoned business leader with 20 plus years driving high-performing teams and scaling multi-million-dollar organizations into elite performance cultures. As regional operator and director of sales and marketing at Lead Advisor, he brings expertise in executive coaching, management, training, and workforce development. It is a pleasure to have Steve Hill joining us on the podcast for today. Steve, thank you, brother, for being on.
Ted, I appreciate it so much. Ever since we first talked several weeks ago, I said, man, this guy's got a heart for men and energy for life, and somebody that I hope I can develop a relationship with. So the chance to talk to you today, I've been excited about since we talked. So I appreciate you having me on.
Man, likewise. And I always say, hey, real recognize real. So that energy you felt right back at you, brother. And that's why it was a no-brainer having you on the podcast. I'm so glad we got to connect. And I want to step out of the way so I can give the audience to have an opportunity to meet you before we jump into the conversation. So I always ask at the beginning of the episode, just really that icebreaker for folks is, if you were to walk into a room full of people, they don't know who you are or what you do, how do you introduce yourself?
That's a great question. It's a great question. It dives in. I would answer that differently over the years. I think today, if I walk into a room, which I would like to say is my best version of myself that I've ever had, I would start with, I've been married 20 years to a girl I met in college who's amazing. I've got 4 young girls that I'm having a blast as a dad raising and being involved in their life and being present as many ways as I can. I'm having a blast doing that. I've got a heart and a passion for men and families and a strong passion. I love business. I think there's places you can have effect and large effect. And to me, or for me, I found that in the business space. So I love spending time in the business space with high achievers, people that are either high achieving in companies, people that are starting or building companies. And I've found that working with them is something I very much enjoy doing. So husband, father, love growing and building people, and especially leaders and people that are higher achievers in the world.
Man, I love it. That's fantastic. And I did mention one of my favorite things about that question at the start is I could break down the 20 plus years business experience. I could break down the titles and things you've done and accomplished, but it doesn't tap into the core of the person I'm speaking to, the core of the man.
Yeah.
And I also get to pick up on a little bit of the journey, a little bit of the story. And you said something right there about best version of me. For a lot of guys who are listening, they don't feel like the best version of themselves.
Right.
And quite frankly, they might not be sure how to get there. So I'm curious for you, being that best version of yourself, man, what'd you have to go through to get here?
I've been super fortunate, Ted. I've had the opportunity since my young 20s in different seasons and different guys, but I've had an opportunity to get around some really good men And
Mm,
one of the guys, a guy named Brad, I was able to get around for a couple years of that season. He made a comment and he said, If I introduce myself 2 years from now, I hope you don't recognize the person you're talking to today." And that just set in motion for me that growth is a continuous thing. And I call it peak to peak growth, where you're standing with what you currently have access to, what's the best you can do? Excuse me. What's the most you can lean in, the most you can grow? How do you make that 1% difference every day? And I've leaned into that. And so growing in as many areas as I can, trying to live victoriously, trying to redefine and constantly solidify what it means to win in the areas of my life, where I'm at and the seasons I'm at. I do think I'm the best version today of myself that I've ever been. And quite honestly, and I think here's what a lot of men do, Ted, and you can push back on this, but I think a lot of
mm,
men are programmed, especially the competitive achieving men. We're programmed to compare ourselves to where we want to be and compare where we are to where our goals are. And sometimes that's not like it is a driver and it's very motivating, but if you don't ever pause to recognize where you came from, like you're going to always want to do more things and climb more hills and accomplish more stuff. And it's not fair to constantly and always compare yourself to where you want to be. There's a really good book I read
mhm.
a little while ago, 18 months or so, Gap and Gain, and it talked about just taking a
Yeah.
moment to say, "Hey, look where I've come from," and it not taking away from the drive of where you want to go. So I'm very excited about where I'm at and how I'm living my life. I'm also incredibly driven to not stay here very long. So if we talked in a couple months, I hope I'm a better version then than I am today. So
Yeah, man, that is fantastic, and I could say I love, this past weekend, had two college buddies, but one of which I've known since high school, and there were two big things that stuck out to me after the weekend, and number one was, how different we all are, right? My one friend I knew in high school, my other buddy, we became fraternity brothers, that's how we met, and now the three of us are there with our respective wives and kids.
mm,
And so one was our values stayed the same, but two was we are so different. We've changed so much. We don't get it like we used to. Our jokes are different, but in that changing, there was something foundational that stayed the same, which is why we stayed as friends. But even in our discussions, we're talking about where we came from, but also, hey, what's the pivot? What is the plan now? How do we move forward and get into this next season of life? And when it comes to seasons of life, leaving a season isn't a bad thing. It's starting the next one, which offers so much opportunity. When you went from your season, I'm curious as to how you went from managing $400 million in Gatorade to guiding leaders with lead advisors. What was that transition of seasons like for you as you worked with these big companies and then landing with lead?
yeah, it's a great question. And I still remind myself of this today. When you go through these changes and these challenges, man, sometimes it seems so hard and can be so confusing, and it's hard sometimes to see the opportunity, and honestly, it can be frustrating. It shouldn't be, but it can be frustrating when you have a good friend that goes, "Listen, there's a blessing in all things, and the sun always shines above the clouds," and all that's true. But when you're in the moment, that's sometimes is really hard to digest. So I will say,
Yeah.
looking back on it, I wouldn't change how it worked out at all. Like it was all so many learnings and so many good things and great people to meet. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, Ted. But so many great people to meet. But the transition was interesting. When I was in my young 20s, there's a really good book out. John Eldridge wrote a book called Father by God. It's a really good book. And he talks about going in
Ooh.
your 20s about how you enter like this cowboy stage and how every man should enter that stage and go through it properly. And part of that stage is, and you're just kind of figuring yourself out in like what you're good at, what you like to do. You think you're good at probably a lot more than you actually are, which is okay, which is a totally fine thing. And I went through these phases of I grew up in a small town in Michigan. In that small town in Michigan, I met my wife in college over in Grand Valley State. I met my wife, what became my wife. And we had this discussion about how she grew up, how I grew up, and how we wanted to take the best of both. That completely ironically wound up with us moving outside of Chicago. So we lived for 12
Mhm.
years in a suburb. So I grew up in this little farm town in Michigan, which was awesome, incredible people, great family. I was third generation in that town. And then I moved to Chicago, which I didn't like, but it was, I didn't like the idea of it, but it was the chance to get out there and do something big like I wanted to do, and not have to move all over like my wife experienced growing up. So we lived over there. And when I worked for Gatorade, like I got all this, it was PepsiCo, but subsidy of PepsiCo. And so I, gosh, I learned what it was like to work at a big company. And the idea to me, Ted, was that I would go climb that corporate ladder and I would get to success and make the money. Like I loved how I grew up, small town, close family. But there, I always thought, or for a while, I thought, man, if I could just go make a bunch more money, then things would be better.
Mhm.
And I kind of traded one for the other to a large degree, where I went and I focused more on the money and the pursuit of success in a career than I did necessarily on the front. Like I still developed some really good friendships and met some incredible people, but my main focus for a period of time was pursuing financial success or career success. And I ran into some hiccups at the big company that there were certain moments where I saw boxes that needed to be checked versus achievement or uh, best qualities that should have been recognized, and just some things that I said, I don't know if I want to pursue that for another 20 years. And so that was where I started my journey of more entrepreneurship. And so I started some different businesses, some small, some medium, some were partnerships. And so I kind of went through this discovery. Again, back to the John Eldridge reference. Like I started going, okay, what do I like? What do I not like about this? And where do I feel incomplete? And so I went and while I lived in Illinois, I'd run some small businesses. I'd done network marketing for a long time, and that was a chapter of my life that I learned so much stuff out of. I got out of that, and I went into more traditional business. So I started a brick and mortar company, and then I started a construction company. Partnered with some guys in a construction company, and this pursuit of financial success and a business card in an office in a building. And, we'd grown this construction company all over the country. God opened some really awesome doors very aggressively for us. And it was great. So we went from a handful of people to over 100 employees in less than 3 years, which was an amazing ride. And but I got to this point of I was on the road all the time. I was traveling all the time. My wife and I started having kids at that point. And so this is a really long answer to your question. But to sum it up, I started meeting a lot of people that are doing very well financially, but they were very unfulfilled in the other areas. And so it just caused me to pause and say, what does this next chapter look like? My kids were getting to the point where they were walking and talking, and they were starting to do things I wanted to be there for. And so it caused me to answer a bunch of these questions of what do I want? How do I want to be defined? What do I want to pursue and apply my gifts and talents into? And so that caused me to transition from running the business. I'd learned a whole bunch of stuff running the business. And I said, I think I can add a lot of value to entrepreneurs. I'd run projects where we'd made millions of dollars, and I'd run projects where we'd lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I said, gosh, if I could help someone else avoid that, number one, I could help more people. But number two, I know that would have been super valuable for me. And so that was a little bit of the pivot. And honestly, Ted, the shortest answer and what really got me on board was I had a friend that reached out to me from Illinois, a guy named Jason. He runs a company called Takedown Adventures. He's an awesome dude. He runs hill takers and men's, all these cool things. He had invited me to this event in Charleston, and I went down there, and I was in this transition out of the construction company and into the what's next. So a little bit of that desert scenario of what is next and what am I supposed to be doing? And what became really strong in my heart was impacting men. Having kids, you become acutely aware of some of the different things going on in the world that before you either didn't pay attention to or didn't know about. Well, I had four girls. My girls are all 4.5 years apart. And so I became very hyper aware of some of the things that I wanted to encourage them into and some of the things that I really wanted to do something about, uh, the idea to make the world a better place for them. so that had transitioned. I wanted to build men, and I think that families matter. I think that moms are unbelievably valuable and important. But honestly, Ted, I think for sake of ruffling a little bit of feathers, I think men have fallen asleep at the wheel for quite a while. We haven't fulfilled the role of being watchmen like we're called to and like we're supposed to. I think that's led to a lot of problems. And so as I transitioned out, I met this guy that said, I build four-dimensional men that help improve families and homes and communities. And we instantly connected. And so we formed a really strong relationship that then became a partnership in business. And so that's what I pursue professionally now, which is incredibly fulfilling and a ton of fun.
If iron sharpens iron, so does one man sharpen another. But if you're a man and you're alone or listening to this, then who sharpens you? What's going on, guys? Ted Payton here, host of the Modern Man Podcast, also founder of the Noble Knights Mastermind Group. And I'm just out here encouraging you to find your circle. Maybe you're on a personal growth journey and nobody around you understands the new mentality that you're possessing. That's okay. You can find an online community that will pour into you, will navigate your goals and navigate your obstacles, share their experiences, resources, and more. Join the Noble Knights Mastermind Group and try us out for free to tap into a community of men helping each other scale up and reach their goals. Check out themodernmanpodcast.com. Man, I'm excited to talk more about that when it comes to the four fires. But before jumping there, you hit on something amazing that I think our listeners might be feeling right now, or maybe it's creeping up because they get a lot of business advice from this podcast and episodes. Many successful men like yourself are on it, but it's the and then piece, right? It's the I'm going to make all this money and then I'm going to get these accolades and then that we never stop to fill out. And because the and then is blank, when we do step one, we look at step two with empty hands. And what's tragic is sometimes as men, we give up what we value the most for that accomplishment, that next promotion, that next title. And we start to realize, okay, all this money doesn't buy what I want, which is time with my family, with my wife, the date nights, which are great. But what good is the date night if you're having to stay at work late because it's the end of the month and you're getting invoices out so you can make them enough money to pay for the house that you're paying a mortgage on that you're barely home for.
That's right.
So what I heard you describe in your transition before we talk about four fires was more of that embodiment of, okay, there's more than just this one piece. Or you said the four dimensions, right? A four-dimensional man. There's more to just this one piece of myself I've been building. What is it you think most men are missing when they're chasing the accolades, the business aspect? What do you find that they're missing in that world?
I think man, honestly, if they're missing something, I think it's the confidence or the courage to step into and accept the answer to those questions. Like you're right. Most guys never ask that question. They never ask, what is the end game that I'm shooting for? And the ones that do, very few of them go, I'm going to make very few men will tell you money solves all your problems. Very few will tell you that, especially people that have had money. They won't tell you that. Now, they will tell you it's better to have money than not have money. Right? They'll all tell you that. Like if you're given the choice, it's better to have money than to not have money because there are a lot of problems actually that can be solved if you're financially healthy. But the idea of pursuing that at the cost of everything else. So I think number one, they don't ask the question. And number two, when they do, they don't actually commit to it because of either what somebody else might think. And a lot of times people live in this space of they fill in the blank for what they think other people think of them and their decisions. And they based upon that. So they think that they'll have more social credibility from a car they drive or a neighborhood they live in. And for the people that does give them more social credibility, most of the time they're not on your list of caring that you have the credibility from those people anyway. And so we live this period of our lives really to appease other people without slowing down. And I'll tell you I don't know that I could have in my 20s answered this in a way that I committed my life to. And I think there's some guys that can, but I think a lot of guys can't, which is why I do believe like what you're doing with the Noble Knights. And there's so many, like there's a lot of people out there that care about men. So in some kind of in my 20s to have the ability to tap into a mentor or a mentorship program or even a group of men that were a decade or two ahead of me. I had a little bit of that, which was super valuable to me. I would encourage any guys that are trying to pursue the answer to this question that don't. I would encourage them to find that. It can be so incredibly valuable. Like you read a book and you're getting a segment of someone's life in 250 pages. To be able to actually get around
Mhm.
people and ask them questions, I think is invaluable. So I think they're missing the courage to act upon the answer to that question if they answer it, because that will lead you in a way that, like, here's an example for you, Ted. I used to constantly, hey, your buddy calls you up, oh man, I've been working so much, right? Or can't wait for a vacation. Or for me, there was a period of time where for years I never went on vacation. I just worked all the time. And somebody go, I'm going on vacation. Oh man, I wish I could go on vacation. And the whole premise to me and a lot of guys is vacation is vacating part of a life that you don't really want. So like we're working so hard and doing all these things, but we can't wait to take time off, or we complain about working. What I've reframed for me, Ted, is you know what, my work is important. What I do professionally is important because I believe it blesses people and I believe it adds value to the world. What I do as a husband is important because how I treat and honor my wife will lead to years of either good or bad enjoyment or not. How I treat my kids, like I think in a lot of ways, what I'm contributing to raising my kids for sure will live far beyond my body. And so all these
Mhm.
different areas that to me now become like work is a good thing. Like Ted, I work all the time. But my work isn't only in pursuit of money. My work is in pursuit of relationships. My work is in pursuit of taking care of my body in a way that it will perform how I want it to for a long time. So I go to the gym and I work out. My work is in my marriage so that we can enjoy and create awesome memories together that my kids will be able to talk about. My work is in my faith so that when brothers and friends come to me with questions or in need that I hope I can lend strength or at least direction to them. So when you're not intentionally building relationships, then it's like, okay, when I'm not making money, what do I do? So I'm either working or I'm not. But to me, I have goals for all these different areas of life. So I love working. Sometimes I work at the
Mhm.
beach. Sometimes I work in the mountains. Sometimes I work in the office. Sometimes I work in my backyard with a soccer ball as I'm kicking around with my kids. But it's all intentional. So I love it.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic because you're integrating that, and I do believe it, we look at the animals, right? And they wake up and they're searching for food. They're active beings, and we are on this planet to be active. And the problem with the money is we're chasing, honestly, we're chasing this human created thing that we call money to equate the exchange of effort and energy from one to another so we can live and survive. And we could focus on expertise instead of generalizing everything. But when that's the only aspect that we focus on, we let everything else fall by the wayside. And we all know a table can't stand on one leg. You need four legs. And you mentioned four-dimensional man. What are those four dimensions? And speak more to how your partnership and your friendship grew and what it's meant for you in your life.
Yeah, that's a great question, Ted. And I'll paint an analogy for you. Because I like to think in terms of pictures, and this has always made a lot of sense to me. So when we talk about these four areas of life, we call them fires. So there's four fires in your life, and there's a few reasons, but at a surface level, we all understand the concept that if a fire has things to burn, it's going to burn hotter and bigger, right? So if you look at the areas of your life as fires, you can get a quick understanding of, is it smoldering with the coals? Is it even lit? Or is it on fire providing heat? Okay. Every day when we wake up, if you think about having an armful of logs, those logs represent your time, energy, and resources. At the end of the day, you will have deployed those logs into something. You don't go to bed with any logs in your arms. You've deployed all of your resources for that day before you go to bed, by the time you go to bed. And you could have wasted them. You could have thrown them in the ditch. You could have put them, a lot of guys put them all on one or two of their fires. Well, over a period of time, if you're only feeding one or two fires, what happens to the other ones? Right? They're going to go out and you pay no attention to them, right? And so those four areas of life, or those four fires, as we talk about, number one is professional. So we all have a professional fire. Your professional fire is what you do for a living. Specifically, it's made up of your craft and your ability to convert that to cash. Your craft is, to me, is more than just what you do for money. It's asking the question of what unique talents and gifts do I have inside of me. Like I believe that,
Mm,
as much as there's not a lot of things I believe incredibly strongly about, but I'll tell you one of those things. I believe every human being has a talent or gift. I believe, me personally, that God has put it inside of me, but I believe everybody has some kind of gifting. Now, whether they know what it is, they've ever asked that question, whether they acknowledge that that's true or not, those can all pollute that idea or the clarity of the fact that, regardless of all those things, I believe everybody has a talent and gift. So if you're crushing it right now, or if you're down and out, not sure what your next step is, your craft, to me, is partially indicative of what are you gifted to do. Ideally, if you can apply what you do for work and for money aligns with what you're gifted to, those are the people that say the corny things like, "Oh, I'll never work a day in my life." Like, there's some truth to that. If what you do, you're good at, it gives you energy and all the things, like, you really enjoy what you do. Now, they're not always directly aligned, but your professional fire is made up of your craft and your cash and your ability to convert that where you're properly monetized in a way that both provides the strength you need, and ideally that fire burns strong enough that if there are needs around you, that you can supply those, whether it's a friend that's got a flat tire, or it's an organization that's going into the mountains to help after a hurricane, and they could use hundreds of thousands of dollars. Whatever that strength is to you, that's your professional fire. Number two is your physical fire. Your physical fire is important because, listen, of all the things, if you lose your money, and I've lost mine a few times, you can get it back. If you crash, lose a car, you can get it back. If, like, all these things you can get back. We get one body, period. And maybe with some of the stuff that Bosco, these other guys, I don't know, who knows what happens in the future, but as of, you get one body, and how you take care of that, specifically how you eat and how you exercise, how you eat and how you move, will determine how long you can use that body to do the things that you want it to do. Whether that's hike, hunt, climb mountains, whatever it is, how you take care of your body on a regular basis, how you fuel that fire, will determine how long your body stays an ability to function at the level you want. Now, listen, I do acknowledge, and it's important to say this: we can't control everything. Like, we can't control all the disease, and we can't control accidents. Okay, some of those things happen; they're out of our control. Some of those are very tragic and sad situations. Short of that, though, there's a lot of things we really can control. Like, you can be strong
yeah.
for a long time. You can be athletic for a long time. This old, oh, I'm getting older, and like, I hated the whole dad bod phase. Like, just marketable excuse to be lazy. But so number two is your physical fire. Number three is your people fire. Your people fire is your friends and your family. This idea that you can live life and experience life, both the highs and the lows, to a much deeper and better way if you've got good people around you. Your friends and your family make that up. Like, what's the use of climbing this big mountain, making all this money, if at the end of the day, like, your wife left you, or your kids don't respect you because you didn't pay any attention to it while you were building this thing? And it's so unique, Ted, because this my transition to lead, we would get around, like, you talk to people making really good money, like millions and millions and millions of dollars. And some of them live amazing, awesome, incredible lives. But there's a fair number of them who've got to this point where, what you said earlier, like, hey, why do you want to do that? Well, because I want to make money. Okay, why? Well, because I want to work for myself. Okay, why? Well, because, and eventually you get to the reason of why, the motivation for why people started the thing. And a lot of times it's, I want to go climb Mount Everest, or I want to go travel the world, or I want to do these things. And then the next question we like to ask is, well, if you build this thing, but your wife's not there to enjoy it, is it still what you wanted it to be? If you're so overweight and broken down because you didn't take care of your body because you were, quote, too busy working, that you now can't go on that hike, you now can't do that, because your body won't function. Like, if you ignore these things, there's going to be a certain point where you go, man, I wish I would have. And so your people fire. And
Mm,
then the fourth one is your purpose fire. And I'm a big believer, Ted, that we're here at this time, in this time of all the stuff that's going on, both the good and the bad. And depends on who you listen to. Some people tell you it's good, some people tell you it's bad. But what remains the same is I believe we are here for a purpose and on purpose for such a time as this. So there's a
Mhm.
lot of people that say, "Oh man, if I was born 20 years before, or if I was born 20 years," the reality is you're not, and you're never going to change that. So I believe that I'm here right now for a reason. I want to make the most of that. I believe my purpose fire, which is made up of my connectedness and commitments that I have with, and I guess what I like to ask other people, because I don't have an agenda or any of those things. But one thing that I think it's healthy for men to answer is, do you believe you have a creator? It, whatever that means for you. It can be
Yeah.
whoever, whatever, but do you believe you have a creator? Like, do you believe there's a soul in your body that was created? And if not, that's
Yes.
okay. But you have to like most guys don't answer that question. They go, well, I grew up this way, or they want to tell a story about the church, or all these other things. Like strip all that away. And this is the question for guys to answer if they've never answered it. Do you believe you have a soul? And if you believe you have a soul, do you believe there's a creator to that soul with whatever path that takes you down? But it's a good question to answer. And if you do,
Mhm.
and there's some that won't, and that's okay. At least they've answered the question. The tragedy is never answering that question until you have to. But if you do, then the next questions become, if you have a soul and there's a creator, do you believe that creator of your soul has any behavioral expectation or relational expectation of the soul? Or do you think it was just kind of spun off into the cosmos? So if you do,
Mhm.
then there's a certain guiding principle based on how you answer those questions individually of how you maintain that relationship and how you live it out in your life. So those four fires, if you can imagine by day, by week, by month, and not and by year, but also by decade. Like, what does your life look like 10 years from now if you're intentionally taking those logs every day and placing them? And there's seasons of life where more logs will go into the professional fire. There's seasons of life where more logs will go into other fire. But there shouldn't be seasons where any of those are completely and entirely ignored because one, you won't accomplish what you want to. But number two, the people around you, like especially if you're married, there's going to be a need for that people fire. And it might not be you that has the need, but it might be somebody that cares
Mhm.
deeply about you and needs that fire to be burning so they can extract heat from it at that moment in time. If your wife goes through something, she's going to need you to be there with her. If a good friend goes through something, if the job all of a sudden gets replaced by AI, like there needs to be some understanding of what are the gifts you bring to the world. And now that a robot replaced what you do for money, how do you find a different place to place that gift so you can still take care of your own family financially? So that's where I've gained a ton of benefit. Lead Advisors allows me professionally to go into work with business owners that are either growing companies or trying to grow companies and talk to them and have a conversation about what does it look like to not like we're going to win in business. Ted, I
Yeah.
love helping entrepreneurs grow because the people they support, the people they hire, the people they employ, like I think their effect is like a ripple when you throw a rock in a pond. That ripple, I think entrepreneurs and high achievers in the workplace, I think the ripple effect and positive influence they can have is massive. So I love working with those guys and gals. But specifically sitting down with guys, I make them answer the question, what do these other areas of look like for you? And how do we define what success looks like in those areas so that you don't live a life of regret as you get older? Like let's create more
Mm.
memories than we like so we spend a lot of time there, and I'll ask all these guys that because I've seen a lot of business owners get to the point. I convinced my wife to let me go build a construction company with four young kids for a year. I was gone on the road almost the entire time, and I came back going, I probably could have done that smarter, but I never answered those
Yeah.
questions. And so, anyway, that's been the transition to lead, and out of that, there was a conversation. Alan's the guy that started Lee. He's an incredible human being, a partner, a great friend of mine. Uh, the question was posed to Alan. Alan's the one that architected all this. The question was posed to Alan. You're literally making families better, people better. You're making people think about stuff they've ignored or haven't thought about. But you're only doing it for people that are running businesses and growing companies and can and want to and can pay for that. But the value and the heart you have for people extends beyond the business world. And so out of the for-profit and lead that does human consulting and so to summarize lead, Every company has a product or service. They have processes and they have people. Every company in existence has those three things. We're the people experts. We focus on people, building and developing managers and leaders in the workplace. I've never seen an exceptional company that didn't have exceptional people. So we work in the people space. We coach owners of companies, people that are trying to build companies. We coach and help them in all aspects of their business. Companies that are a little bigger and more developed, we'll work with their executives, people that are head of departments that have been assigned outcomes, um, or delegated outcomes. We'll work with them. And then we also train up managers and leaders in organizations. And so that's what we do through Lead. Incredible. We love doing it. There's a component, and what was birthed out of that conversation that I referenced that Alan had was, what about the people that don't own businesses or aren't executives? Whether they're going to be and not going to be doesn't. What about just men? Like, what about Ted? What about the people that pee standing up? Like, they've got a calling and responsibility on their life. And so we spun off the Four Fires, which is a nonprofit, and the Four Fires builds four-dimensional men, and that's what we do. We help walk them through and guide them. We've got fire circles, we call them, which are guys that'll meet once or twice a month. We've got 8-week courses that guys go through in small groups. They go through and they ask hard questions. They have authentic conversation, and the idea is that they're building and living this four-dimensional life. So that, I mean, think about the places you've ever worked or been influenced by, whether it be your church,
Yeah.
your work, wherever it's at. What if there were, like, if you made a list right now of how many and you probably have a bigger list than most guys, Ted, but how many men could you put on a list that you consider, man, these guys are crushing it in life, not just
Yeah.
making money with bad relationships, not great relationships, but they can't pay their bills. Like, they're crushing it in every area of life. In my experience, and I've talked to hundreds of men, those lists are often very small, and a large amount of men can't think of anybody to put on that list, which is
Yeah.
okay, except back to your earlier question, what are most men missing? It's the courage to step out and do it. The reality is, at some point, someone will be asked that question, will they be able to put your name on that list? And so we need to
Mm.
live into becoming those men so we can help others, so we can pave the path and help others do the same. So
I could answer that question and would say, to your point, I would think I'd have a bigger list than most because of my intentional seeking of that and working with others in establishing that. But even in the space that I'm in, short, very short list. And I can also say with confidence too, even the men that are on that list, they'll tell you that it's a short season. Things are good, but just like I forecast weather, storm's coming, right? Like
that's right.
the storm's coming, and I've been told, hey Ted, when things are good, prepare for things to be bad. When things are bad, pray for them to be good. But when things are good, the men that I know who have their lives under control, it's because they don't take those good times for granted. They prepare for the bad times, they navigate them, and they run through them like buffaloes. So they shorten the time horizon of how long they have to deal with that season, and they get back to a baseline so much faster. And I imagine whether it's the 8-week courses that you mentioned or the fire circles, when when the men come into this approach of building that four-dimensional life, the foundations in those four areas, what are some of the transformations you've been able and blessed to see? What are some of the transitions you've seen in these men firsthand that would be worth sharing?
That's, man, it's such a you're really good at this, Ted. I like that. I love
I
what you
appreciate it.
said. I'll answer that. I love what you said, that they're preparing themselves to be the buffalo and lean into it. Like, it's the old quote, or today it's memes, I guess. But, like, don't ask for an easier life. Ask to be stronger. And that's the idea. Like, you're going to go through this stuff, but if you can get stronger and surround yourself with strong men, then it doesn't mean you don't go through it. It just means it's how you process it. You're not in it as long. To answer your question on the fire side. So you think about a fire. A fire needs three things to burn. It needs a spark, it needs oxygen, and it needs fuel to burn. Okay. Those three, any fire you see, it needs those. At some point, it had to start with a spark. It had to have oxygen to burn, because if you deprive it of oxygen, it'll go out. And it needs something to burn. It needs fuel to burn. Well, if we look at the fires in our life, we also need three things. So when you're asking about transformation, number one, the spark for the four fires in our life is awareness. I was unaware,
Mm,
Ted, that there's a vision and a guide for what it means to be successful in all these areas of life. Okay. And guys can find that wherever they choose to find it. I found it through the word. And I would lean into the word and everywhere. I mean, it was amazing, Ted. I had no idea. I'd been plugging into the word for many years, and I never connected the fact that there's a vision for how I'm supposed to treat my body. Like it's spelled out and it shows me. I don't need to guess. There's an outline and a direction for how to have good relationships. So number one is awareness. Like when I became aware of the fact that, you know what, I do only get one body. I shouldn't take this thing for granted as much as I do. I need to honor my wife, all these things. So number one is awareness, become aware of it. That's a transformation for a lot of guys because they're not aware that there's a place they can go to learn how to make these a reality in their life. Number two is so that's our sparks awareness. Number two, our oxygen is ownership. And I'll say that I think
mm,
the biggest in the initial conversations I have with men, the ownership is the biggest transformations I see. Because when you can get around people that'll be honest with you and love you enough to look you in the eyes and say, I hear what you're saying, but I'm gonna supply you some strength because as long if you don't take ownership for any area of your life because you're passing blame on somebody else. And listen, I get it. I'm not minimalizing how hard some of this stuff is. I've heard crazy stories. So have you. Your listeners have lived through some of the stuff, like whether it be abused as a kid, whether it be, I had a guy that told me ever since I was 4 years old, my parents told me I was a mistake over and over and over. This guy's in his 40s and he thinks he's a, whew, it gets me that gets my tweaker there, Ted.
yeah,
He's in his
yeah.
40s, man, and he's believed his whole life he's a mistake. His identity is that he was a mistake. When I talked to him about moving on and being and living into these four fires and making his life what he designed it for, he it was really difficult for him to get over the fact that this happened to me and I was too young to do anything about it. Well, that's true for a stage of life, but there's a certain point in your life where whether it was something as a kid, whether your boss fired you, whether like these things, if we blame where we're at in life on someone else, that person that we give the blame, we also give them the power to change it. So until we take ownership of where we are based on our decisions, we don't have the power to change those. So ownership is where I've seen the most transformation. And sometimes it
Mm,
takes a lot of conversations and that's the hard part because it cuts deep because it's easy to blame somebody else. Like it's super easy, Ted, just to go, oh, it's their fault. But if you want to change that, it might be their fault, but it's not their responsibility. And then the third area is
mhm,
discipline, and I think this is where I see it over time lived out transformate in the results. And discipline is the day to day doing what needs to be done, whether or not you feel like it. Man, it's going to the gym, whether or not you feel like it. It's performing your best, whether or not you're mad at your boss, whether or not your biggest client loves you or hates you. It's doing the best you can where you're at with what you've got. That's the discipline part. And discipline lived out is what creates habits. And habits, like I heard the guy one time say, you're born looking like your parents but you'll die looking like your habits. And
woo,
habits you develop in your life are what create the person you become.
mm. Amen to that. That should just be a mic drop. I need everybody to go back and listen to how you make a fire because between that spark, between that oxygen, and between that fuel, um, that's a strong fire that can burn for a long time for a beautiful life. And you know when life gets cold, it, you nestle by the fire to stay warm, and just as you build that fire within you, those around you would lean into you to stay warm as well. Talking on the leadership aspect for the men who value that for their homes and the people that depend on them.
That's right.
I want so many guys to have access to this, Steve. So before we wrap up, what are the links? What are some of the resources or uh, pages, Instagram pages, or anything folks can go to get more?
Yeah. So I personally just do mostly, I don't do a lot of social media. I do mostly just family stuff on my social media. So that would probably
Nice.
be marginally disinteresting for most guys. But some areas where I am regularly and where they can find some of this stuff. So corporately leadadvisors.org. So .org, leadadvisors.org is one place. A lot of these tools, a lot of what we do professionally is there. On the For Fires side, it's for, FOUR dash fires.com. Okay, so interesting. Our for profits at .org and our nonprofits at .com. Easy way to remember it. But for-fires.com. Jeff Rice is our executive director. He is incredible. He will connect with you, send you resources, put you in touch. If there's local guys that are getting together doing things, resources online, all the things. So those two spots, and Four Fires runs an Instagram as well. They post some cool transformations and dudes working out and guys spending time with friends and family, all that stuff. So those are
Yeah.
the local places. If you're in the Charlotte or Atlanta area, we're starting to do quarterly events where we're bringing guys together and just talking about living four dimensionally. And I will say this, Ted, I would encourage guys to like pursue getting around good men that are trying to be better men, that aren't satisfied, that aren't content, but they're leaning in to be even better men. And when you find one that stirs your heart, man, dive into those. And like I tell guys that I've been to a lot of different men's events. There's ones at different seasons I've been to. I think the misconception and something that's incredibly important for guys to understand: growing men isn't a competition. Like these are, most of these are, even if there are for profits, I think that's great. But a lot of these are that's not the focus, even of the for profits and the nonprofits. We just want to
Mhm.
build men because the impact it has in the world, the impact it has in our communities, the impact it has in our homes. So find the one that stirs your heart and grow in the season as long as that stirs your heart, wherever that's at. So if you've got one you're going to now, check out Four Fires, get some materials, but stay with the one you're at now. If it's making a positive impact and a change in your life, that's the goal. And so, anyway, I just
Yeah.
think it's worth reminding guys of that. That you said something earlier. The shiny thing isn't always the best thing. Um, but if you're looking for a place
Mhm.
to grow, we love growing men.
Yeah, and honestly, that's what this is all about. And the beginning, and I mentioned the vision and the mission of connecting men in pursuit of their potential. You mentioned purpose. I believe I was put on this planet to connect men. I am a connector, and while I pour into other men, help them grow, I'm wholeheartedly aware of the fact of, and I've done it with my parents. They'll say something 100 times, but someone else says it, I'm like, ooh, nice.
Mhm.
So just like this, for anybody who has that familiarity with me, maybe they've heard me talk up, down, left, and right. And just the way you say something, Steve, they're like, oh man, I never heard it like that. Because my goal with this is I don't see us as competition. I see us as accentuating each other
That's right.
because we're both doing a mission that's bigger than either of us. And that's the only way we can get this thing successful is if we pour into each other's cells. So I'll have those links down below underneath. And I know we just have about a minute left in the podcast. I want to make sure I ask the last question, which is a heavy one, but something tells me you'll be okay answering it. And I always ask, what is something you've seen or something that's happened to you that shapes the way you view the world as a man?
It's a great question. When I got a car accident shortly after I got my license, and I broke a vertebrae in my back. And I had the doctor tell me I would never play sports, and he needed a few more hours to tell if I'd be able to walk again. And I remember rejecting the idea that someone else could tell me how I was going to live my life. And as I've reminded of that or remember that, I remember life is short, and you have a responsibility to control what it is you can control. And again, situations and circumstances in life may limit the answer to that in some ways, but you're never not in control of anything. You always have the ability to influence and control something about your life. It may be a lot, it may be less than 100%, but you always have the ability to control that. So if you've got friends, pour into them. If you got people you need to apologize to them. If you've got a goal you want to accomplish, there's lots of inspirational sayings in the Theodore Roosevelt's. But if you got a goal you want to accomplish that God's put on your heart, then climb that mountain. And you're better off falling short of the summit than you are just sitting there looking at it your entire life. Like, live life and life, lean into relationships, and lean into some of these answers to the questions that are important to you. That was a big impact for me. And I would say the second one, Ted, and I don't know if you allow me for two, but I would say the second one is I watched some really, really, really good and close friends of mine that had been married for a long time. Uh, a couple different scenarios. Some of them ended up getting divorced. Some of them almost got divorced. I will say you'll either pay the price of discipline or you'll pay the price of regret. And those things taught me it's hard to be disciplined, but the byproduct of living a disciplined life is much better than not being disciplined and living the results of what life throws at you. Because being undisciplined is choosing to not control the things that you can. And the results of that I have found much harder to accept the idea. So I live into the
Mm,
idea that I use other people's hindsight as my foresight. I love being around good men. I love being around good people and leaning into how can I learn from every situation I get into. Those have both been very impactful for me. And honestly, Ted, you made a comment. I can't wait to talk to you more and get to know you better and understand more of what makes you tick. You made a comment to me that was as inspirational as what I've heard almost any man make to me, just in conversation. You said it casually, which is what I love about it because
mm,
it's just how you're wired. You said something to the effect of, "I looked at my options, and like being a TV star, like you were on track to do things that there's people right now going that would be my life dream, and you had the fortitude and the guts after answering the question. You had the guts to say, you know what, I know what that'll cost to do that, and I don't want to pay that price. And I think, Ted,
mm.
what I appreciate about you as a man and why you're just like you're such a servant to do these things, and because you really care. And I just gotta say that those things to me are incredibly impactful. So when you ask what are things that have been impactful, meeting men like you that have the heart that you have is very impactful for me. And I'll go home tonight wanting to be a better man because I was able to spend time with someone like you.
And if we could lead by example, I'll be sure to make sure you have my cell number after this and vice versa, because I am looking to continuously surround myself with men who are elevating themselves, being better, working on a holistic growth, those four dimensions. So let's connect, let's grow, let's bond, and continue to lean forward, man. Thank you so much for just sharing your expertise, being on the show, seasoned business leader with 20 years experience driving high performance teams and scaling multi-million dollar organizations into elite performance cultures. Steve Hill, it's been a phenomenal honor having you on today, brother.
I appreciate it, Ted. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I'm going to recap really quick if you have a couple more moments to sit with me as some of our listeners are driving or working out while listening. So I take notes for them, but 2 years from now, I won't be the same. That's something that we said earlier on. Growth is continuous, and just like you might have heard the adage of you can't walk in the same river the same time. Why? Because both the man and the river has changed. Your growth should be continuous and continue to change as the years go on. Look where you came from and keep going. Imagine you're in a rowboat and you're rowing, you're rowing, you're rowing, you're spent and you're exhausted, and you open your eyes and you see you still have so far to go. But then you look back and you realize how far you've come. That's what so many of us fail to do. And we don't realize that we've gotten so much farther than how much room we have left to go. So keep on rowing and pushing forward. What does the next chapter look like? We go through seasons of life. Growing up, you might have been asked, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? It's too much weight. What do you want to do for this season of your life? What do you want to give your heart to? What do you want to focus on? And then find the courage to find the answer of your life. Do the practice that Steve mentioned. Sit down. Do you believe you have a soul? If so, okay, great. Do you believe there was a creator of that soul? Now, what is the relational expectations between the creator and that soul? And are you going to live according to the answers that you find? And we're not talking about what answers you should have. We're just talking about finding the answer and then move accordingly to what you find. And then I work all the time, but what do I work for? You could always be working, but not just for money. It's working for family. It's working for memories. It's working for the life that you know you can build for you and those that depend on you. And then build your fire, your four fires: your professional, your physical, people and your purpose fire, and you need the ingredients. You need the spark, your awareness. You need that oxygen. So you need ownership. And of course, you need the fuel. And it's all about that discipline to keep that fire burning all the way into eternity. If you need help, reach out to Steve, reach out to myself. Also, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and share this episode with someone else you know can get value from it. And leave us a rating. It's the only way we improve and we get better is by you giving us an honest rating on what you like, what you don't like. I'm not going to ask for 5 stars. I want your honest opinion, and I will do my best to meet your expectations next time. With that being said, as we always say at the end of the episode, everybody wants the sunshine, but they don't want the rain. But you can't get the pleasure without first the pain. Let's grow.